My name is Alex, I'm 32, and I own a commercial HVAC company. For the last 3 months, my entire world has shrunk to the 4 walls of a neonatal intensive care unit room. My son, Leo, decided to make his grand entrance into the world 10 weeks early. He's a fighter, a tiny warrior hooked up to a symphony of machines that beep and whir, each one a note in the song that is keeping him alive. Yesterday, my parents and my sister came to visit. An hour after they left, I got a call from a frantic nurse at the hospital. A vital piece of Leo's monitoring equipment had been unplugged, and the alarms had blared through the entire unit. When they pinpointed the outlet, they found my sister's phone charger plugged in its place. My father's explanation over the phone was that my sister, Chloe, was on an important call and her battery was dying. They thought it would only be for a minute. They thought it wouldn't matter. They risked my son's life, my fragile, premature son's life, to charge a phone. They have no idea what they've just unleashed. They still see me as the quiet, reliable, background character in their lives, the one who just fixes things and asks for nothing. They don't know who I've become. They don't know what I've built. But they're about to find out, and I promise you, it's a lesson they will never forget. Before I continue and tell you exactly how I made them understand the gravity of their actions, do me a favor. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the one who was expected to sacrifice everything while getting nothing in return, hit that like button and subscribe. And drop a comment below letting me know you're here. Knowing I'm not alone in this means more than you can imagine. Growing up, my world was a tale of 2 children. There was Chloe, and then there was me. Chloe was the sun around which our family universe revolved. She was born with a certain sparkle, a charismatic charm that my parents, Mark and Susan, found intoxicating. Everything she did was a masterpiece. Her crayon drawings were hailed as early Picassos, her off-key singing was evidence of a budding songstress, and her C-grade report cards were excused as the byproduct of a creative mind that couldn't be constrained by rigid academics. I, on the other hand, was the moon, steady, predictable, and largely ignored unless my orbit was needed to stabilize something for Chloe. My straight-A report cards were met with a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before the conversation immediately pivoted back to Chloe's upcoming dance recital. When I won the state science fair in 8th grade, a genuinely significant achievement that I had poured months into, my father forgot to even attend the award ceremony because Chloe had a minor tiff with a friend and needed his immediate emotional support. The favoritism wasn't just emotional, it was deeply financial. Chloe got new clothes for every season, I wore her outgrown unisex jackets or my cousin's hand-me-downs. For her 16th birthday, she was gifted a brand new convertible, a ludicrously expensive purchase that my parents financed. For my 16th birthday, I was given a set of socket wrenches and told it was time I learned to do my own car maintenance, even though I didn't own a car. I got a job at 15, bussing tables at a local diner, not because I wanted pocket money, but because I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that no one was going to pay for my college education but me. I watched them bail Chloe out of every conceivable jam. When she crashed that new car, my father paid the damages out of pocket to keep the insurance from going up. When she was caught cheating on an exam in high school, my mother stormed the principal's office, accusing the teacher of having a vendetta. They mortgaged their future to fund her ever-changing, never-succeeding business ideas, a failed Etsy shop selling lopsided pottery, an influencer career that amounted to them buying her followers, a life coaching business she abandoned after 2 weeks. All the while, I was the responsible one, the lazy child. They never had to worry about me, so they simply didn't. I was a ghost in my own home, my needs and accomplishments transparent. My existence was one of quiet self-reliance, forged in the fires of their benign neglect. I learned not to ask for help, not to expect praise, and most importantly, never to depend on them for anything. This upbringing, as painful as it was, gave me a gift they never intended, unbreakable independence. The day I turned 18, I moved out. I had saved every dollar from my diner job and another part-time gig I'd picked up fixing small engines in my neighborhood. I found a tiny, run-down apartment on the other side of town and enrolled in a trade school for HVAC certification. My parents barely noticed I was gone. They sent a perfunctory text a week later asking if I needed anything, a hollow gesture I knew was more for their own conscience than for my well-being. I politely declined, and that was that. In trade school, I didn't just learn about condensers and ductwork, I found my calling. I loved the logic of it, the satisfaction of diagnosing a complex problem and bringing a system back to life. I graduated at the top of my class and was immediately hired by a large commercial firm run by a man named Arthur Henderson. Mr. Henderson was everything my own father was not. He was gruff and demanding, but he was fair. He saw the hunger in my eyes, the relentless work ethic born from years of having to be my own safety net. He took me under his wing. "Alex," he'd say, "you've got good hands, but the real money isn't in turning the wrench, it's in owning the wrenches." He started teaching me the business. He showed me how to read blueprints, how to bid on large-scale commercial contracts, how to manage payroll and client relationships. He was the mentor I desperately needed, the father figure who saw potential in me, not just utility. For 5 years, I was a sponge. I worked 60, sometimes 70-hour weeks. While my sister Chloe was burning through our parents' money on another failed startup, I was investing my overtime pay. I lived frugally, socking away every spare cent. On the weekends, I started my own side business, taking on small residential jobs Mr. Henderson would pass my way. I called it Apex Mechanical. It was just me in a used van, but it was mine. Then, the opportunity came. Mr. Henderson was retiring and wanted to sell his firm. He had other offers, bigger ones, but he made me an offer I couldn't refuse, a seller finance deal that would let me take over the company. He believed in me. For the next 5 years, I poured my soul into that business. I expanded, hired a loyal crew, and built a reputation for being the most reliable commercial HVAC contractor in the state. My family knew none of this. To them, I was still just Alex, the air conditioner guy they'd call me when their unit was on the fritz, expecting a free fix, and I'd oblige, just to keep the peace. They never asked about my work beyond that. They didn't know I was the one signing the paychecks for a team of 30 technicians. They didn't know I had acquired 3 commercial properties as investments. They didn't know that the air conditioner guy was quietly becoming a multimillionaire. It was during this time that I met Sarah. She was a project manager on a new construction site we were working on. She was brilliant, sharp, and saw right through the facade I maintained. She saw the hurt from my family, but more importantly, she saw the strength it had built in me. She celebrated my success, not because of the money, but because she knew the sweat and sacrifice it represented. When we found out she was pregnant, it felt like the final piece of my real life, the one I had built for myself, was falling into place. My secret success wasn't about hiding money, it was about protecting my peace. I knew, with absolute certainty, that if my family knew the truth, they would see me as nothing more than a solution to Chloe's endless, self-inflicted problems. My success was mine and Sarah's, a world we had built far away from the neglect of my past. The nurse's voice on the phone was a jolt of pure ice water to my soul. "Mr. Evans, there was an incident with Leo's monitoring equipment. He's stable, but you and your wife should come down stable." The word hung in the air, a flimsy shield against 1,000 terrifying possibilities. Sarah and I broke every speed limit getting to the hospital, our shared silence a deafening scream of fear. We burst into the NICU to find our tiny son, blessedly asleep and unharmed in his incubator, but with a different nurse, a unit manager, waiting for us with a grave expression. She explained what had happened in a low, professional tone. My parents and Chloe had been there for their first visit to meet Leo. The NICU has strict rules, but they had charmed their way into a longer stay. According to another nurse who witnessed it, Chloe had been complaining loudly about her phone being at 1%. She was in the middle of closing a deal, she'd claimed. In a moment of staggering ignorance, my mother, Susan, had looked around for an outlet, found the one powering Leo's cardiorespiratory monitor, and unplugged it to make room for Chloe's charger. The machine that tracks his every heartbeat and every breath. The alarm had sounded instantly, a piercing shriek that sent a half-dozen staff members running to his isolette. They had plugged it back in within seconds, and Leo, thankfully, had not been in distress. But the The catastrophic potential in that one selfish act was incomprehensible. My blood ran cold, then hot with a rage so pure it felt like a physical force. When my parents and Chloe arrived back at the hospital an hour later, summoned by my furious text, their attitudes were the final confirmation I needed. I confronted them in the sterile waiting area, my voice shaking with a mixture of grief and fury. "What were you thinking?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "How could you unplug his monitor?" My father, Mark, stepped forward, his face a mask of defensive indignation. "Now, hold on, Alex. It was an honest mistake. No harm was done. There's no need to get hysterical. The word was a lit match on a trail of gasoline. Chloe, ever the victim, chimed in, tears welling in her eyes. "My phone was about to die. I was talking to a potential investor." "You're always so dramatic, Alex." It was for 2 seconds my mother began to sob, not for what she had done, but for being called out on it. "We came here to support you," she wailed, "and this is how you treat us? After everything we do for this family? You're being so cruel." It was then that the full, horrifying picture crystallized. They didn't get it. They felt no remorse because they genuinely did not comprehend the gravity of their actions. In their world, a world that had always bent to their whims, Chloe's important call was on par with the constant, fragile life support of my premature son. My son was an inconvenience. His needs were secondary. The entitlement was so profound, so deeply ingrained, that they saw my rage not as a father's protective terror, but as a personal attack on them. They were the victims here. I was the one who was making a scene in that moment. Something inside me, a long-dormant hope that they might one day change, finally died. A few days passed in a blur of anxiety and exhaustion, every waking moment spent by Leo's side. He was getting stronger, a tiny testament to resilience that put my family's fragility to shame. The phone call I knew was coming finally arrived. It was my father. His tone was not apologetic, it was commanding. "Alex, your mother is a wreck. This has gone on long enough. We are coming to the hospital this afternoon, and we are going to put this nonsense behind us. We expect you and Sarah to be reasonable." It wasn't a request. It was a summons. They were doubling down, convinced that their authority and a dose of guilt would bring me back in line. I agreed to meet them, but not on their terms. Not in the NICU waiting room where they could play the role of concerned grandparents. I told them to meet me in the hospital's public cafeteria. When Sarah and I walked in, they were already there, a united front of parental disapproval. My father started immediately, launching into a lecture before I had even sat down. "I don't know what's gotten into you, Alex. The disrespect you've shown your mother is appalling. We have always been there for you, for this entire family, and one tiny mistake, a misunderstanding, has you treating us like criminals." Chloe, sipping a latte, added, seriously. "And it's really bad timing. My investor is getting cold feet, and Dad and I were talking. We think a small loan of $50,000 would really get my new wellness brand off the ground. With a new baby, you should be wanting to invest in family." The audacity was breathtaking. They had seamlessly transitioned from downplaying their life-threatening negligence to hitting me up for money. That was it. The final straw. I let them finish, a cold calm settling over me. I looked at Sarah, who gave me a small, resolute nod. I reached into my briefcase, the one I used for client meetings, and pulled out a folder. I slid it across the table. "What's this?" my father grunted, annoyed at the interruption to his tirade. "Open it," I said quietly. He impatiently flipped open the folder. Inside was the Articles of Incorporation for Apex Mechanical, LLC. On top of that was a consolidated financial statement prepared by my accountant, showing the company's valuation, my personal investment portfolio, and my net worth. I watched his eyes scan the pages. I saw the flicker of confusion, then utter disbelief. His jaw literally dropped. My mother leaned over, her brow furrowed, and her own eyes widened as she processed the numbers. Chloe snatched a page, her expression morphing from petulant boredom to avaricious shock. The silence was thick and heavy. "What? What is this?" my father stammered, his voice a hoarse whisper. "This is a joke, right?" "That," I said, my voice clear and steady, "is my company. The one I built from the ground up while you were funding Chloe's hobbies. You think I'm just an air conditioner guy? I am the guy who owns the entire company. I own the building your dentist's office is in. I own the small strip mall where you get your dry cleaning. I've been successful for a very, very long time." You just never bothered to ask. Their faces were a spectacle of raw, unfiltered emotion. The shock was immediately consumed by a tidal wave of greed. My father's entire demeanor shifted. The authoritative patriarch vanished, replaced by a fawning, sycophantic stranger. "Son, I had no idea. This is incredible. We always knew you had it in you." My mother was already crying again, but this time they were tears of pride, or more accurately, tears of perceived opportunity. "Oh, Alex! A businessman! Just like your great-uncle. It's in your blood." Chloe was practically vibrating. "Oh my God, Alex! A loan would be nothing for you. We could be partners. Think of what we could do." The mask was off. The truth was laid bare on that sticky cafeteria table. I let their pathetic, fawning excitement hang in the air for a moment, savoring the stunned silence that followed their greedy outbursts. I looked at my father, whose face was stretched into a painful, unnatural grin. I looked at my mother, dabbing at her eyes, already mentally spending my money. I looked at Chloe, whose mind was clearly racing with business plans that all involved her, and my wallet. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table, and the smile dropped from my face. "You don't get it," I said, my voice flat and devoid of the emotion they were used to. "This isn't good news for you. This is the end of the line." My father's smile faltered. "What are you talking about, son? We're your family. We're proud of you." "Proud?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "You're not proud of me. You never have been. You're proud of this." I tapped the financial statement with my finger. "You're proud of what you think you can get from me. 5 minutes ago, I was a disrespectful, hysterical son who needed to be put in his place. Now I'm a brilliant businessman. It's in whose blood? The only thing you saw when you looked at these papers was a new bank. A bigger, better one to fund Chloe's failures." I turned my gaze to my mother. "You risked my son's life. You unplugged the machine, keeping him safe so Chloe could charge her phone, and you have not shed a single tear of remorse for that. You only cried because I hurt your feelings by being angry about it. Your grandson almost died because of your carelessness, and all you can think about now is how my money reflects on you." Then I looked at my sister. "And you? A $50,000 loan? After what you caused? You are so buried in your own entitlement that you genuinely believe you are the victim in all of this. You believe you are owed my support, my money, my forgiveness, for an act that could have cost me everything that matters in this world." I pushed my chair back and stood up, Sarah rising with me, her hand finding mine. "Let me make this perfectly clear. You were right about one thing, Dad. I am being reasonable. I am being reasonable by removing a threat to my child. And that threat is you. You are not welcome at the hospital. You are not welcome in my home. And you will not have a relationship with my son. You didn't want a son or a brother, you wanted a resource. You wanted an ATM. And now that you've finally realized I am one, you think you can just make a withdrawal. The account is permanently closed. The bank is bankrupt. You will not get a single dime from me, not now, not ever." I let that sink in. Their faces had gone from greedy shock to ashen horror. They sat frozen, mouths agape, like statues in a museum of shattered expectations. "We're leaving," I said, my voice firm. "Don't contact me. Don't contact my wife. When you are capable of understanding the magnitude of what you did in that NICU room, and only then, you can try to write me a letter. Until then, we have nothing more to say." And with that, Sarah and I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I could feel their stunned, desperate gazes on my back, but for the first time in my entire life, I felt no obligation, no guilt, no need for their approval. I felt free. The silence from their end lasted for precisely 48 hours. It was a fragile, temporary peace that I knew wouldn't hold. The first wave of their counterattack came not from them directly, but from the flying monkeys they dispatched. My phone started buzzing with calls from extended family members, people I hadn't spoken to in years. The narrative was consistent and poisonous. Alex, the cold-hearted son, had suddenly come into money and was now cruelly cutting off his loving family. He was a monster, withholding their only grandchild out of pure spite. Thankfully, I had one ally in the enemy camp, my mother's sister, Aunt Carol. She was a kind, sensible woman who had always seen the lopsided family dynamic for what it was. She called not to lecture, but to warn. "They're telling everyone you're a greedy egomaniac, Alex," she said, her voice laced with sympathy. "Your mother is playing the heartbroken martyr to anyone who will listen. Your father is telling the men in the family that you've lost your way. I know the truth. Don't you let them get to you." I thanked her and steeled myself for the next phase. The direct assault began with my mother's texts. They were masterpieces of emotional manipulation. "I can't eat. I can't sleep. My heart is broken. How can you do this to your own mother who loves you more than life itself?" Followed by, "It was a tiny mistake, Alex. A little, tiny mistake. Are you really going to destroy our entire family over one little mistake?" The gaslighting was so thick I could practically taste it. They were trying to rewrite reality, to shrink their catastrophic negligence down to a minor social faux pas. Then came my father. His approach was less guilt and more blustering intimidation. He left voicemails, his voice booming with false authority. "Alexander, this is your father. This public display of disrespect ends now. What will people think? You are making a fool of yourself and embarrassing this family. You will call me back today." Chloe's attempts were the most transparently pathetic. She tried to slide into my DMs with a breezy, "Hey bro. This is all just a big misunderstanding. Let's not let it get weird lol. By the way, I reworked the business plan for my wellness brand. With your capital and my vision, we'd be unstoppable. Call me." It would have been comical if it weren't so infuriating. With Sarah's unwavering support, I held the line. We blocked their numbers. We blocked the numbers of the relatives who were calling to harass us. We created a fortress of silence around our new little family. My chosen family stepped up. Mr. Henderson called just to check in, offering gruff but heartfelt support. "You did the right thing, kid. A man protects his family. The one he builds, not just the one he's born into." My best friend, Dave, offered to screen my calls. My focus was singular, Leo. Every day, he grew stronger, his tiny lungs working better, his weight slowly ticking up. In the quiet hum of the NICU, holding my son's tiny hand, my old family and their manufactured drama felt a million miles away. I was protecting him, and in doing so, I was finally, truly protecting myself from a lifetime of their toxicity. Weeks turned into a month, then 2. The most beautiful day of my life arrived when the doctors finally told us Leo was strong enough to come home. Bringing him through the door of the house that Sarah and I had made a home was a feeling of profound, tear-jerking victory. Our world was no longer the sterile, beeping environment of the hospital. It was warm sunlight, the scent of baby powder, and the quiet joy of late-night feedings. In the blissful bubble of new parenthood, the drama with my family faded into a distant, background noise. The silence from their end became permanent, not because they had respected my wishes, but because their world had begun to implode. Aunt Carol kept me updated with occasional, discreet phone calls. The consequences of their lifelong irresponsibility had finally come home to roost. Chloe's wellness brand, which my father had apparently co-signed a massive loan for, had crashed and burned in spectacular fashion. The investor she was so desperate to impress on the day she endangered my son had been a fabrication. The loan was now due, and with no business income, the bank was coming after my father. They had leveraged their own home to secure the funds, a house that was already carrying a second mortgage from one of Chloe's previous failed ventures. They were facing foreclosure. The news didn't bring me joy, but a sense of somber, inevitable justice. For decades, they had operated without a net, always assuming I would be the one to eventually catch them. They had treated me as their retirement plan, their emergency fund, their get-out-of-jail-free card. When I had removed that possibility, their entire fragile financial structure collapsed. It was a humbling they had desperately needed, delivered not by me, but by the natural consequences of their own choices. Meanwhile, my life was blossoming. My business was thriving, allowing me to give Sarah and Leo the security I had never known. I found a good therapist and began the difficult work of untangling the complex knots of my childhood, learning to validate myself instead of seeking it from people who were incapable of giving it. Sarah and I were building our own family, on our own terms, filled with love, mutual respect, and unwavering protection. We celebrated Leo's monthly birthdays, created new traditions, and surrounded ourselves with our chosen family, Mr. Henderson, who was like a doting grandfather, and our close friends who had supported us through the entire ordeal. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for a storm to pass. I was living in the sunshine, a peace I had earned, a life I had built from the ashes of neglect. The healing was a slow, quiet process, but it was real. And it was all mine. About 6 months after we brought Leo home, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. It was my father. His voice was different, smaller, stripped of its usual bluster and authority. It was the voice of a man who had been thoroughly defeated. "Alex," he said, and the name wasn't a command, but a quiet plea. I need to talk to you. Not about money. I swear. Just to talk. My guard was up, but my curiosity was piqued. I agreed to meet him at a neutral coffee shop the next day, telling him to come alone. When he walked in, I was taken aback. He looked 10 years older. The arrogant posture was gone, replaced by a weary slump in his shoulders. He sat down and stared at his hands for a long moment before looking at me. "We lost the house," he said bluntly. "We're living in a small rental apartment. Chloe moved to another state. With a guy she met online. She blames us. She blames you." He took a deep breath, and his eyes glistened. "She's right to blame me. Not you. Me. I did this. I spent your whole life propping her up and walking right past you. You were quiet, you were capable, so I just let you be. It was easier. I took you for granted, son." I see that now. He finally met my gaze, and for the first time in my life, I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. What we did. What your mother did. In that hospital room. There's no excuse for it. I didn't see it then. I was too proud, too stupid. I was more worried about being challenged than I was about my own grandson. It took losing everything for me to finally see what I had thrown away. The apology was clumsy, imperfect, but it was real. It was the first genuine acknowledgement of my reality that he had ever offered. It wasn't a magic wand. It didn't erase 30 years of neglect. But it was a start. I listened, not interrupting. When he was finished, I laid out my own terms, my voice calm but unyielding. "I appreciate you saying that, Dad. But words aren't enough. If there is any hope for us to have a relationship, it will be on a new foundation. There will be no more talk of money, ever. You will respect Sarah as my wife and the mother of my child, and you will apologize to her directly. Any relationship you and Mom have with Leo will be earned, slowly, and always with us present. The dynamic of the past is dead. This is the only way forward." He didn't argue. He didn't push back. He just nodded slowly, a tear finally tracing a path down his weathered cheek. "Whatever you say, Alex. Whatever you say. It's more than I deserve." We sat in silence for another minute, the space between us filled with the wreckage of the past and the faint, fragile possibility of a future. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. but it was a crack of light in a door that had been sealed shut. It's been a year since that day in the coffee shop. The path to a new normal has been slow and deliberate, navigated with the caution of a bomb disposal expert. My parents, true to my father's word, sat down with both me and Sarah and offered a heartfelt, difficult apology. My mother, humbled by their new circumstances, finally seemed to understand the terror she had caused. Seeing her grandson, Leo, now a healthy, giggling 1-year-old, brought home the reality of what she had almost lost for all of us. Their relationship with Leo is nascent, developing under our careful supervision. They visit once or twice a month, for an hour at a time, at our house. They are learning to be grandparents on our terms, to ask before they pick him up, to respect our rules, to simply be present without making demands. The fawning praise is gone, replaced by a quiet, almost reverent observation. They are watching the family I built, and I think, for the first time, they respect it. Chloe remains a distant figure. She sends the occasional bitter text, still framing herself as the primary victim of it all. We maintain our distance. Her presence is a toxicity our new, healthier family dynamic cannot afford. The relationship with my parents will never be what it once was, and for that, I am profoundly grateful. The old foundation was rotten. What we are building now is fragile, but it's honest. It's built not on obligation or shared blood, but on a hard-won respect that I had to demand. Looking back, the journey has been excruciating, but the lesson it taught me is invaluable. I learned that you cannot force people to see your worth. You have to see it in yourself so clearly that their blindness no longer matters. You have to be willing to walk away from the people who are supposed to love you in order to protect the people you are supposed to love. True family isn't about who you're born to, it's about who shows up, who holds you up, and who protects your heart. By protecting my son, I finally learned to protect myself. The peace I have now is a testament to that. It's the quiet confidence of a life built on self-worth. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever had to draw a line in the sand to protect your own peace and build the life you deserve, please share your experience in the comments below. Your story matters. Hit that subscribe button for more content about overcoming adversity and creating your own definition of family. Remember, you are the architect of your own life. Build it on a foundation of respect,